And welcome to the BYU Library Family History webinar. We're glad you could join us today. I'm Rachel Bettis, and I'll be your host for this webinar. If you have technical difficulties during the webinar, please use the chat box and I can address your concerns. You're also welcome to use the chat box during the webinar for comments, insights, and questions. However, all questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. Our next webinar will be on June 20th with Maureen Brady on the Quebecois French-Canadian research. If you would like to access a previous webinar, please visit our webinar index on our website or search on our YouTube channel. All of our webinars are recorded and uploaded by the following Monday for your convenience. We also post links to recordings and other updates on our Facebook and Twitter accounts. For today's webinar, we're pleased to hear from Kathryn Grant on English research, how the General Register Office site can help you. Before we begin, here's a little bit about Kathryn. After years on the sidelines, Kathryn began doing family history. Somewhat to her surprise, she discovered that she loved it. Her specialty is helping new family historians find success and maybe even avoid some of the mistakes that she's made. Kathryn teaches Sunday classes at the BYU Library Family History Center and presents at other family history events. Her column on family history ran in the Nauvoo Times for about a year and is still available online. In addition, she's a regular contributor to the Family Search blog. Kathryn works as a technical writer and instructional designer with a focus on usability and process improvement. Her current work assignment includes developing training used on mobile devices. Besides doing family history, she loves uplifting music, thought-provoking books, and fresh raspberries. We'll now turn the time over to Kathryn.
So, you guys, I am so excited about this webinar today, and we have a lot of information packed into it. So, I would say fasten your seat belts and hold on, and don't stress too much if it starts to seem like a lot of information because we're recording this class and you'll be able to listen to the recording again and then pause it as you need to take notes or let things sink in or whatever. But this is such a useful site that I'm very, very excited to share with you guys some things that I've learned over the years that have really helped me put this site to good use. So here's what we've got on our agenda for today. First of all, since this is a site that houses civil registration records, we'll review the basics of civil registration, or for some of you, it may be a first time exposure because we don't have civil registration as such in the United States. And so this might be a new concept for some people who are watching this webinar. After we review the basics, we'll do an overview of the GRO site, the General Register Office site, and then we're going to walk through three practical examples. These are examples that I use very frequently in my research, so I hope that they will be helpful to you also in doing your research. The first one is finding a woman's maiden surname. The second is searching for all the children of a couple, which is especially helpful in the 1800s and early 1900s just because infant mortality was so high. And so sometimes infants or children who died between censuses, it can be very hard to find them. And then the last example will be finding a child's death registration when that child died between a census. Well, actually, it would work for any. It's just that we tend to be looking for young children who died between censuses. So the last topic that we'll cover is how to actually order copies of the registrations if you choose to do that. Okay, let's talk about the basics of civil registration. What is civil registration? Essentially, it is the reporting of vital events to a government authority. Typically, those events are births, marriages, and deaths. Every time a vital event is reported, a record is created for that event. That's why civil registration is so helpful to family historians. So, what about civil registration in England? Civil registration began in England on the 1st of July, 1837. Before that time, we did have a lot of church records, but after the 1st of July, 1837, we have government records, civil registration records, in addition to church records. Registration is required by law for all births, marriages, and deaths. Registrations are done in registration districts, and this is actually one of the trickiest concepts to wrap your head around, or at least it was for me, for civil registration in England. And so we'll be talking a lot more about registration districts and how to make sense of them and how to use them when you're searching for civil registrations. Each registration district has specific boundaries. Any event that occurs within the boundaries of that district are registered in that district. Registrations from 1837 to 1983 are kept by district and organized into quarterly volumes. And you'll see in a few minutes why that is important. And then from 1984, they started keeping annual volumes instead of quarterly. Quarters are often referred to by the last month of the quarter, which may seem a little bit counterintuitive. So, for example, the September quarter, the quarter that is referred to as the September quarter, actually covers July, August, and September. Okay, about registration districts, what are they? They are administrative regions. They usually cover multiple parishes, although there are exceptions to that. They may overlap county boundaries. They might have the same name as a parish or a county, which can lead to confusion actually. The boundaries are typically different. Boundaries, and to throw another wrench into the mix, the boundaries changed frequently over time. So, since a picture is worth 1,000 words, let's illustrate how counties and registration districts sort of relate to each other. So, this is a piece of an English map. It covers the counties or has pieces of the counties of Lincolnshire, Nottinghamshire. We've actually got Derbyshire over here. You can't see the whole name, but that's what it is. Yorkshire is up here. And you can see that this map makes it easy to tell the counties apart because they're different colors. By the way, if you're interested in seeing this amazing site where I got this map from, go to maps.familysearch.org. This is kind of an anomaly. I don't know of any other site on Family Search quite like this one. What it shows is different jurisdictions in England as they were in the year 1850. But the thing is, you can kind of extrapolate. In other words, it's not just helpful for 1850, but it can help a little before 1850 and even a little bit after. And so I love this site. I find it incredibly useful. Highly recommend to anybody doing English research. Okay, so those are the counties. Let's now overlay the registration districts on top of the county map. Do you see why I said sometimes they're kind of hard to wrap your head around? So some districts are completely within a county. For instance, Horncastle is completely within the county of Lincolnshire. But get over here to Worksop and look at the Worksop registration district. It's got a piece in Nottingham, a piece in Derbyshire, and a piece in Yorkshire. So this is an example of a registration district that actually covers parts of 3 counties. And that's actually not that unusual. You can see that Thorn up here has a piece of Lincolnshire and a piece of Yorkshire. So I just feel like this is a very useful illustration to show that registration districts kind of are their own thing. If you want more information about registration districts, the most helpful site that I know of for this is run by UKBMD. So that's basically United Kingdom Birth, Marriage, Death. This site is just full of wonderful information for people researching in England. This particular site, if you drill down to the reg sub portion of the website, you will find historical and current coverage of registration districts. In other words, what parishes were in it or what areas even. It also includes unparished areas. it will give you descriptions of boundary changes and dates of boundary changes. So usually what I do when I'm looking for information though, honestly, is I'll just use Google because UKBMD pages are usually near the top of search results in Google when you search for registration district information. So Google can make that very easy. Although the website is wonderful, it's very well organized and so you can drill down to the things you need. I just find that sometimes it's faster to ask Google, you know, I'll just say like, uh, what's a good workshop registration district, and it will give me information on that. So this is a great place for information. Also, if you want more information that beyond this quick review that we did, here's a video on YouTube that, as I recall, is about 5 to 7 minutes that goes into a little more depth about English civil registration. And then here is a full class on English civil registration. So either of those will give you more information. Okay, with that as a background about English civil registration, let's get to know the GRO site. So why do we want to go to the GRO site? What is on that site that is useful for family historians? Basically two things. There are searchable indexes for birth and death registrations, although not marriage, and we'll be talking about that later. And there are options to order digital and paper copies of birth, marriage, and death registrations. And I'll be honest with you, I only usually order, because they cost money, I usually only order those copies if I need them for some reason, either sentimental reasons, if it's a family member, or if there's some information that I expect to be on it that I have not been able to find any other way. So to get going on the GRO site, you do need to create a free account, but they've made it very, very easy to do. You just go to the GRO, whoops, I did not mean to actually go there. As you can see, this is a hyperlink. So let me get back where we were. You would go to this URL right here, but that's kind of long. Well, let me say two things right here. At the end of this class, we'll give you a link to this slide deck so that you'll be able to go in and you can click any of these links. As you saw, they will take you to the site. But honestly, it's just as easy to Google General Register Office account, and one of the top search results will be this site. You do need to add the word account on the end if you're going to Google it, because I've tried Googling several times, so I know it's not a fluke. I've tried Googling just General Register Office, and you get all kinds of GRO pages that aren't this one, that aren't the one that you need. So for instance, the GRO also handles passports. Well, passports for the living aren't really relevant to us in family history. So long story short, either go to this link or Google General Register Office account to get to this page. Then the link for setting up an account is actually kind of down the page a little bit and it's very small. So go down to the page under the login area and look for this link, register as an individual, and then you'll be able to set up your account. And it's just very much like a typical account. It's going to ask for your name and your password and things like that. It's super easy to get going. So once you have set up your account and you log in, then usually where you want to start for births and deaths is with a search. So out of all the options on this main page, this is the one that you want. You'll notice too that the options are repeated over here in this list. So you can either click this link or this and they take you to exactly the same place, which is the search form. So let's do a search 101 on the GRO search form because there are some interesting things on it, some features that might not be immediately obvious, and there's some gotchas. So we're going to talk about all of those things. So first thing to be aware of, as on many websites, if there is a red asterisk by a field, that means it's required. You cannot conduct the search without completing every field that has a red asterisk. Also, by most of the fields, if not all, let me look. Yeah, by every field, there is a red circled question mark. When you hover over that, it will give you additional information about the field, which is very, very helpful. And I'll be honest with you, when they first introduced these red question marks, they weren't there a few years ago. When they first added them, I thought, oh my goodness, that makes the screen so cluttered. But after using the new search form a couple of times, I don't even notice them anymore, which is awesome. They're there if you need them, but they don't get in the way. Okay, so you start by telling the GRO search form whether you want a birth or a death. The reason they ask you to differentiate between those is that the search fields are different depending on which one you choose. So after you've chosen what you want, but most of the fields are the same, I should add. And after we get done looking at the birth form, we're going to quickly look at the death form to see what is different. What are there's actually two differences, so we'll get into that. After you choose a year, you are able to choose a date range. This plus or minus lets you choose either the exact year with, 0 plus or minus, or you can do plus or minus 1 year or plus or minus 2 years. It does not go beyond that. But here's the cool thing that isn't immediately obvious, at least it wasn't to me, is that if you choose plus or minus 1 year, it actually searches 3 years. So here's the little example down here. If you click plus or minus 1 for 1850, you'll actually be searching 1 year before, 1849, 1850 itself, and 1 year after 1851. And then for plus or minus 2 years, you get a 5 year span. So here's the example of a 5 year span. If you do 1850 plus or minus 2, you'll be searching from 1848 to 1852. The name fields, this one catches people off guard sometimes, is that the surname is first because many fields will have you put the first name first. So I have sometimes searched by accidentally putting the first name in the surname field and the last name in the forename field, and then I wonder why I didn't get any results. Well, that's why. So just be advised that you want to put the right names in the right fields, and here's another gotcha that does trip up people frequently, and that is that suppose you have a name like Mary Jane. If there is a space between the first name and what we might consider a middle name or part of a compound name, anything after the space has to go in the second forename field. So in the example of Mary Jane, if you were to put Mary Jane in this field and do the search, you would not get the results that you were expecting. What you have to do is put Mary in this field and Jane in this field. Next to the name fields, there are include fields, which are very helpful for fuzzy searching. It defaults to an exact match, which means, of course, it matches exactly what you typed. But there are three different phonetic alternatives or sounding alternatives. So the first one is you can choose phonetically similar. And the website, the reason I put Metaphone with a question mark here is the website used to say if you chose phonetically, it would say this choice uses a metaphone algorithm. And if you wonder what that is, as I did, Google it and like Google metaphone algorithm, and it will tell you what kind of an algorithm it is for fuzzy searching. So in other words, it doesn't have to be exact matches, it can be close matches. What I find, but since they took that notice off the website, I'm actually not sure if they still use a metaphone algorithm. They may, but I don't know. What I have observed by using phonetically similar is that I usually get broader results than I do with the next choice, which is similar sounding. This one used to say that it used a Soundex algorithm. Some of you might be familiar with that from other sites that also use Soundex. And again, that's just a method, an algorithm for fuzzy searching so that you don't have to have exact matches. So this one I get more restricted results. So usually what I'll do is I'll try SoundX first if I want fuzzy matching, and then if I don't get on what I'm looking for, then I may try phonetically to broaden the results. Last of all, there's a really cool feature that was added not that long ago called derivative, and it is only on the first forename field. What that does is it uses a name thesaurus for name variations. So, for instance, probably most of us know that for Elizabeth, there's a number of nicknames Lizzie, Beth, Bessie, but we all know that those are associated with the name Elizabeth. And so, if you choose derivative on the first name and you enter Elizabeth, it will find these variations like Lizzie, Beth, Bessie, etc. Also, further down on the search form, there's a space where you can specify the mother's maiden name if you know it to help narrow down the search results. And then also you can specify the birth registration district if you know it to narrow the search results. But notice that these are not required fields. So here is a simple example of searching for birth registrations. In this example, I have chosen 1850 as the year, plus or minus 2 years, so that would span from 1848 to 1852. I've put in only a surname of Bescaby, and I've said that I want males. So in plain English, I have told the GRO site, search for a birth registration for any male with a surname of Bescaby born anywhere in England because I didn't restrict it by a registration district from 1848 to 1852. And these are the results that I got. One thing to point out about this is that the results are alphabetized, first of all by the last name, and then within the last name, they are alphabetized by first name. I kind of expected them when I first started using the site to be in chronological order, but you can see that they're not. They bounce all over the place as far as chronological order because they are in alphabetical order. So you may be asking, let me back up here just a second. You may be asking, okay, I see what you've told me are search results, but what am I really looking at? And if this is an index, what exactly is it indexing? Well, let's look at an example birth registration. This is an actual birth registration for Agnes Bescaby. And so this is one that I ordered from the GRO, and it's a copy of what was originally submitted when Agnes was born. So let's look at how the index entry relates to the birth registration. So first of all, we've got the name Agnes Bescaby, and that shows up very clearly on the index entry. Then we've got here on the registration, we have the mom's full name, including her former maiden name. Well, on the index, all we get is the maiden name, not the full name, but that's still very helpful. Then we've got the year 1868 up here in the corner, and of course it is shown on the index. We've got now here's where it gets a little bit different. The birth, okay, look over here. The birth took place on the 24th of July in 1868. That looks like a zero, but it's actually a six. But it was registered about a week later on the 31st. Oh, excuse me, no, quite a bit later, almost a month later, on the 31st of August in 1868. So parents or the responsible person had 42 days to register a birth. The times for other events like marriages and deaths are different, but for births, they gave the people 42 days or approximately 6 weeks. So you notice this says 31st of August, But how does that translate into a quarter? Well, it falls in the third quarter of the year, which is often called the September quarter. It includes July, August, and September. I had to think about that for a second. Then notice down here in the index, to save space, they just do the initial of the third month. So S quarter is September. If you see M quarter, that's March for the first quarter of the year. And let's see, January, for March, April, May, June. So J would be the second quarter or June quarter. D would be the last quarter or December quarter. So that's how the registration date relates to the quarter. Then we've got the district, pretty straightforward, Pancras. And then the last thing, which actually is not found on the registration, is the volume into which that registration was placed and the page number that it falls on in the bound volume. Now, what a couple of reasons why it's important to be aware of these is they can be helpful in ordering a copy of the registration, and they can also help you match this index entry to similar indexes on other sites, because many other sites actually have a form of the GRO index. They will give it to other people, or sometimes people have created their own indexes. But any site can have an index. The way the GRO makes its money is by selling the certificates. So they let you search for free, but if you want to purchase the certificate, of course, that costs money. Okay, let's look at how the death search form is different than the birth search form. There is no mother's maiden name on the death search form because it was not standard information on a death registration. They did list the informant, so sometimes you could get a mother's maiden name, especially if it was the death of a child born to a single mother, but it wasn't standard information, so it's not included in the index or on the search form. And the addition is that you can specify an age at death to help narrow down the search results. So I mentioned that the essential GRO index, the index, what should I say, a version of the index is available on a number of other sites. It's not always called excuse me, exactly the same thing though. So one of the most well-known sites for English civil registration is FreeBMD, standing for Free Birth, Marriage, Death, and it only has civil registration indexes on it. You can search birth, marriage, and death all at once on FreeBMD. Family search. Oh, and this is a link. Did I say that already? So when you get the slide deck, you can come here and click on this to go to the FreeBMD site. Family Search Historical Records has a version of the same index found on the GRO site, but it is called England and Wales, either birth, marriage, or death, registration index. And here's the giveaway. When it's on another site, it will always have the 1837 starting date. That's what lets you know that this is English civil registration, if it's an English record, like an English collection. If it's some other country, obviously that doesn't apply. In Family Search, they have separated the birth collection, the marriage collection, and the death collection. And these are links to those collections. And so you have to search each one separately, whereas on FreeBMD, you can search them all at the same time. Ancestry has the same index, the Civil Registration Index, but they call it England and Wales Civil Registration Birth, Marriage, Death Index. But notice 1837, they also split out the indexes into three collections. Find My Past, similar thing. Although they don't say registration or civil registration, they just say England and Wales, birth or marriage or death, and you've got your giveaway 1837 there. So the reason this is helpful is sometimes the indexes aren't identical. And so sometimes you can find a registration on one of these other sites that you don't find maybe on the GRO or in FreeBMD or whatever. So this can be helpful in that regard, but also sometimes you'll just be using ancestry.com and you'll do just a general search for a person and you'll come across a record that says this, that has this title, and you might not realize that it's the same thing as the GRO index, but it is. So, hope that's helpful. Okay, with that as a background, let's dive into three of the most useful examples for when you're doing English family history. The first one is finding a woman's maiden surname. So I'd like to introduce you to the Patch family. In the 1911 census, they are enumerated here. We've got Arthur is the dad, Sarah Elizabeth is the mom, and they've got four kids: Edith, Ethelene, Walter, and Arthur. Well, we know from the GRO that the birth registrations of Sarah's children should give her maiden name. Now, you might be asking, why don't you just look for the marriage record of Arthur and Sarah? And absolutely, that's a great thing to do. One thing to be aware of, though, with marriage records is in England, like in the United States and many other countries, women change their surnames when they marry. So if Sarah had a first marriage and then her husband died and then she married again, her second marriage would give her previously married name as her surname, and it would not be her birth surname. And a lot of times people don't necessarily pay attention to that it might not be the birth surname. So while it is definitely helpful and absolutely yes, we should look for the marriage record, it's always a good thing to confirm the mother's maiden name by finding the birth registrations of the children. So that's what we're going to do. So, oh, and I need to go back here. I forgot to say one thing. In order to find where the children were registered, you need to know the birthplace. All these kids are born in Grimsby. Mo Nah, not most of the time. Some of the time, you can Google something like, what is the registration district for Grimsby, Lincolnshire? And Google will tell you, or at least give you a couple of options to choose from so that you can look and find the right one. That didn't happen in this case. So I can't show you how Googling worked to find Grimsby. Instead, I'll show you what I had to do instead. But I want to show you how Googling sometimes can work. So for a minute, we're going to back out of this example, and I'm just going to show you how I Googled for a different birthplace. So I have some family that were born in Cranwell, Lincolnshire. So I came to Google and I said, registration district for Cranwell, Lincolnshire, and it gave me these two results. The first one turned out not to have the parish for the time frame that I needed, but the second one did. So basically, when you click on these links, what you'll get, oh, and notice these are UK BMD links from that site that I mentioned at first. So when you click on one of these links, you'll get a list of all the parishes that are included in that registration district and the time periods in which they were included in that registration district. So this is just incredibly helpful. So that was an example of when Google worked, but as I mentioned, for Grimsby, it did not work. So here is what I needed to do. Option two is that once again, that wonderful UK BMD site has created a master index of all the registration districts and all the parishes and non-parished areas within them and when they were in which registration district. It's amazing. So here is the link. You can go to that. Oh, I saw it didn't make it into a hyperlink. I'll fix that right after this class and then you'll just be able to click it and go there. So when you go to this page, you will get a link to a PDF and it's huge. So you open up the PDF and then you can use Adobe Reader's find function to search for the place that you're interested in. We were interested in Grimsby, right? Well, guess what? At some times in its history, it was known as Great Grimsby. And that's why when I just Googled on Grimsby, it didn't bring me up anything useful. But when I went into this master list and I searched for Grimsby, I found Great Grimsby and found that it was in the Caister registration district from essentially 37 to 97, which covers the birth years of those kids. So now I know that I need to look in the Caister registration district. So back to the search form. How am I going to search for those girls? But to start with, well, fortunately, they were born close together within a 5 year span, so I can actually search for a year that is between their birth years per the census and do a plus or minus. So since Edith was born approximately 87 and Ethelene was born approximately 89, I'm going to choose 88, smack in the middle, as my search year, and then I'm going to do plus or minus 2. I'm going to put in the surname, but I'm not going to put in a first name because I want to find both gals at the same time. If I just specified one name, then I would only find one of them. I designated female and I designated Caister as the district of birth, and I clicked the blue search button, excuse me, which isn't showing up on this screenshot, but it's like right down here. So I click the blue search button and look what we get. We get Edith, Sarah, Amelia Patch, and Ethelene Patch, and the mom's maiden name is Manders. Well, I always love to double check just to be sure, so I repeated the search with the boys, with Arthur and Walter, and got the same result. So now I'm very, very confident that the mother's maiden name, Sarah Elizabeth's maiden name, is Manders, and then I would be able to confirm that on a marriage record. And if it gave a different surname, but I was still sure it was the right marriage, then I would know that I would need to look for a previous marriage, because if her, like I explained before, if the surname is different on a marriage record, and especially marriage records will often say if the person got married as a widow or a widower. So hope that's helpful. Let's move on to example 2, and that is finding all the children for a couple. One of the wonderful things on the census, the 1911 census in England, is that it asks the couple to say how many kids they had, how many were still living, and how many had died. In this case, the census said that this couple had lost two of their children by 1911. But the thing is, all I know is that by 1911 they had died. I have no clue when. So, how can I find those missing children? Again, the GRO site can help us. So the first thing we want to do is determine, or well, we want to follow a basic strategy. So the strategy is, first of all, we've got to determine the year range for our search. It should start with about the marriage year, approximately, and then you can take it to either 1911 if you're pretty sure that the couple did not have children after that time, or if you think they did later, you can choose a final ending year that is probably when the woman would have reached the end of her childbearing years. So to pop back up here, the way we compute the marriage year for the Patch family is in the 1911 census. It told us they had been married 27 years approximately in 1911. So if you subtract 27 from 1911, you come up with about 1884. And they did their oldest child, or their youngest child, excuse me, in the 1911 was 14, which tells me, and she's 48, so she hasn't had kids for 14 years. She's to the age where probably she's near or past the end of her childbearing years. So for this example, we're just going to make the range go from 1884 to 1911. And once you've determined the range, you search in 5 year increments because, again, that's the longest possible range on the GRO site. And you have to search separately by gender. You cannot search for male and female at the same time. So here is what it looks like. Since the marriage year was approximately 84, I chose to start the search in 85 and do the 2 year span, which would search 83 to 87. And then I put in the name, just the surname, because I have no idea what the names of the missing children are. I started with male, and then to narrow down the search results, I put in the mother's maiden name, which we just discovered, and I put in Caister as the district of birth. Now, did I know absolutely it was Caister? No, but since all the other kids were born there, I'm assuming that those two missing children were registered in that district. But if I search and don't find them, then I would expand the search beyond that district. So here is how I would conduct the search. First of all, 1885 plus or minus 2 years male. Then 1885 plus or 2 years female. Then I'd bump it up by 5 years. 1890 plus or minus 2 years male. 1890 plus or minus 2 female. You get the drill, right? So on and on until you reach 1910, which would have included 1911 because of the plus or minus 2 years. Well, as I ran through all those searches, look what turned up. Arthur Albert and William, they apparently were twins, both registered in 1890 in the December quarter. Since they did not show up in the 1911, they both must have died by 1911, but I still don't know exactly when. That's going to be our next example. So let's focus our last example here on Arthur, and let's look at what we know about him that will help us find his death registration. So we know from his birth registration that Albert was born in 1890. We know from the census that he died by 1911. I didn't take a screenshot of this, but Arthur Albert is in the 1891 census with his family. He is age 3 months. But remember that he has a younger brother. Let's go back here. He has a younger brother named Arthur. Whenever a family named a younger sibling by a name of a previous sibling, it was always because that sibling passed away. So from that, we can conclude that this Arthur Albert probably died by 1896 when his younger brother Arthur was born. So let's go to the death form, and we are going to make a death year of 1893 that falls right between 1890 and 1896. And we're going to search by his full name, Patch Arthur Albert, and he's a male. And we click the blue search button that is not visible on this screen, and look what we come up with. And there's only one. It's the only one found. It looks like he did not live much beyond that census, which was taken probably in the spring or summer of 1891. By the December quarter, Albert's death had been registered, so he would have died sometime in the last quarter of December of 1891. Okay, so you can see from those examples how helpful the GRO site is. And so a common question that comes up is how can I attach it as a source? Well, unfortunately, the way the GRO has created their index, you cannot link directly to an index result. The same thing is true on FreeBMD. FreeBMD is a little trickier because it looks like you could link to it, but the links expire after maybe a few hours or a day or whatever. I've had the time vary. But ultimately, the link to that FreeBMD search result that you find will expire. So you can't use a GRO link or a FreeBMD link as a source in Family Tree or any other a tree site for that matter, but you can use a different index such as Family Search, Ancestry, or Find My Past. So let's walk through an example of finding the equivalent of this index entry in Family Search historical records. So we're going to look for Agnes Beskaby, registered 1868 September quarter in Pancras. And here's the volume and the page. So what I'm going to do, there's actually two methods for finding the birth registration in Family Search historical records. If the person exists in Family Tree, as Agnes does, you can go to the Family search logo here. And so when you click that, it's going to run a search in historical records using the information on the page. If she's not already in Family Tree, you can actually just do a regular search by clicking the search option on the top menu bar. But for today, we're going to use this one. So when I search this, look what I found. Nothing. No search results found. So it took me a while to figure out what was going on here, and I hope that this information will be helpful to you if you're wanting to attach a registration indexed record. So here is the deal. Family Search seems to have trouble right now, as of the date of this recording, with recognizing registration districts. So I'm sure they're going to fix it in the future because Family Search just keeps getting better and better. They're amazing. But for now, if you don't find the registration that you're looking for with that first search, here is how to refine the search that seems to be pretty foolproof in finding the registration. So the first thing is to click the collection button, and then you get a list of collections over here on the side. Select England and Wales birth registration, and it'll have that 1837 date. So that's how you'll know that it's the right one. And then also, I've found that the best way to get good results here is completely remove the birthplace, even if it looks like it's the same as the registration district. Completely remove that and then make the birth range exact. So here, by default, Family Search made it from like plus or minus, I think it does what, 2 years before. The year is 68, so it went to 66 and to 70. So we want to make that just 68 to 68. So when I implemented those suggested refinements, Agnes's birth registration came up right at the top. So that's how you can get around the limitation of Family Search, historical record search, often not recognizing civil registration districts for England. So I see here that it says Agnes Beskaby, it says 1868, and it says Pancras. That sounds pretty good, right? Sounds like it's a good match. But just to be safe, let's take a look at the details of this record and make sure that they are in the same volume and page. So we are going to click Agnes's name. You can also click the little document icon, and it brings up this detail here. Notice that it gives you basically all the same information that is on the GRO site, just in a different order, formatted in a different way. But you see, it's got the name Agnes, it says it's a birth registration, the registration district is Pancras, page is 68, which matches the page, volume is 1B, which matches the volume, and registration quarter. Family Search puts all 3 months, which I think is awesome because it makes it less confusing. But this is referring to what the GRO calls the September quarter, and it matches September quarter. So now that we know this is right, we can attach this as a source in Family Search historical records. Okay, last topic for today is how do you order those copies if you decide that you would like an actual copy of the registration? The process is a little bit different for birth and death compared to marriage. Let's look at birth and death first. So it's usually quickest and easiest to order birth and death registrations from search results. You can do it by drilling down, but I just find as long as you're looking for them in the index, it's just so much easier to do it from a search result. So we're going to click Search the GRO indexes, and in this example, I want to order a birth registration for Alice Maud Hambling. So in the search results, you'll notice that there's a button off to the side, an option button. When you click that, you get three different options for ordering a birth registration. You can order a paper certificate that is sent by mail, and in my experience, it takes between, I would say, 2.5 to 4 weeks, depending on the post and how busy they are and so forth. You can order a PDF, which is generally available on the GRO site within 4 working days. Or this is a fairly new feature that they've implemented, I'd say maybe within the last couple of years. You can order a digital image that is available immediately. I'll tell you, I've been spending a lot more money on the GRO site since they implemented this because I know that I can get it immediately and I don't have to wait. The format is JPEG, so it's a graphic image format. So once you open your PDF or your digital image, you can save it to your hard drive. The current costs and delivery times always appear above the search results, and they change from time to time, but not too often. So if it probably pays to take a look at that every once in a while. Make sure that you've still got current information. If you ordered, or after you place a digital order, if you ordered a PDF, you're going to get an email both confirming your order and then also telling you when the PDF has been uploaded. And there will be a link in that email, but basically it'll take you the same place as clicking this link does on the main page. Digital images are available immediately and a link is displayed immediately after purchase. You also get a confirmation email, and what we're going to walk through now will show you how to get back to to the digital image if you have navigated away, or how to display the PDF. So you start by clicking My Orders and you're going to get a screen that looks somewhat like this. You'll have a little search form here, and you can search either by COL number, call number, or you can search by date. I have no idea what a COL number is, and I tried to Google it to find out, couldn't find out. So probably somebody at the GRO knows, but just know that every order that you place is assigned a COL number, and you can use that number to look up your past order. Be aware that the dates here are in European date format. So in the United States, we generally do MMDDYY, we do month, day, year. But in England and in many countries in Europe, perhaps all, I haven't checked, but at least in many countries in Europe, the accepted format is day, month, and year. So if you're worried about getting that mixed up, just click the calendar icon and it will insert the date in the correct format for you. Be aware that these digital copies are only retained in the online system for 3 months. So you definitely want to save them to your hard drive before that 3 months is passed. Let's see, just a minute, I lost my context here. Context. So when you perform a search, either by the COL number or by a date range, you will get a screen that looks like this. It will show you all the matching results. If the order was for a digital image, there will be a link here that you'll be able to click to open that image, and then you'll be able to save it. Ordering a marriage registration. This is the last topic for today, and I hope you're still with me on this. This has been a lot of information to cover, but I do so hope that it's helpful for you. So ordering a marriage registration is a little bit, I won't say trickier, but it has more steps to the process because the marriage index is not currently on the GRO site. So you have to go someplace else to find the marriage index information. So since the GRO site doesn't have the marriage registration, as I mentioned, you go to another site like FreeBMD, and also be aware that you can currently only order paper copies of a marriage registration. Digital copies are not currently available. Do you know what? I noticed that we kind of got this box here is in the wrong place, so ignore this. The box should have actually been on place an order. So I apologize for that. So what we're going to do here is we are going to place an order for a marriage registration. In order to do that, we're going to jump out to the free BMD site and we are going to find the information that will enable us to place that order. So I've gone to free BMD, I have chosen marriages, and I have put in the information that I have for this marriage of Alice Hambling and her husband Alfred Patch. And I have deduced from other records that the marriage probably took place between about 1915 and 1917. So I'm going to run this search, and lo and behold, the marriage I'm expecting comes right up. This is a little counterintuitive. How do I see the full name of the person she married? You click on the page number. Who knew? When you click on the page number, you actually get a list of everybody that was part of this particular registration. For most of civil registration, it was two couples, and in a minute we'll see why that was. Earlier, I've seen like early registrations where there were as many as maybe 6 or 8 couples, but in this case, we've got two couples. Fortunately, I know who I'm looking for. I already knew that my Alice married Alfred Patch, but if I didn't know, I would have to use other records to figure out which spouse goes with which. Actually, I take that back a little bit. After going from 1912, FreeBMD does list the surname of the appropriate spouse, but before 1912, this information is not included on the FreeBMD index. So you will just get a list of 4 people and you might not know who belongs with who. Why is that? It's because of the way that the original marriage was recorded. So for a long time, and I have no idea if this is still the case, but at least in the 1800s and early 1900s, the book, or yeah, the book where marriages were recorded, the way the printed forms were is there were 2 marriages per page. So here we've got Alfred George Patch and Alice Maud Hambling. That's our first marriage. Down here we have Alexander Morgan and Florence Burke. And if you remember, those were the other names here on the registration. Notice that they're just listed alphabetically. So they're not listed by couple. And especially if this is not here before 1912, then all you get is that alphabetical list of the 4 people or the 6 or 8 that were on that original marriage record from which the index was created. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, please ask a follow-up question and we'll address those questions at the end of the webinar, which will be in just a couple of minutes. So in order to order the marriage registration, yeah, this screenshot is right. So you click place an order and you get a page that looks like this. You choose marriage and then and you choose the year, and or you type it in actually, and then you get your choice of I know the GRO index reference information, or I want the GRO to just look for me. Yes, you can have the GRO just look for you, but it's going to take longer and it's potentially more error prone, especially if you are not able to provide very complete information. I figure since it's so easy to find the index information, why not just supply it and make it easier and faster for them to send me the information that I want? So I am going to say I know this information, and when I make that selection, I get this form. It's saying, okay, you said you know the information, please supply it. So I just take the information right from the search results in FreeBMD. We've got Hambling, Alice M, Patch, Alfred G. We already entered the year as 1916. We specify the September quarter, which was here in the FreeBMD search result. We say Edmonton, which is over here. And then, of course, the volume and the page are found right here. And so we plug those in and then we click submit and we pay them some money and they mail us the marriage registration. So that is how you order a marriage registration, a copy of a marriage registration. So this brings us to the end of our webinar today. Thank you so much for coming and for sticking with it. Just by way of review, we covered the basics of civil registration, how that is government reporting of birth, marriages, and deaths, or reporting to a government entity. We learned about the GRO site and walked through these practical examples of finding a woman's maiden surname, very useful in research, searching for all children of a couple, and finding a child's death registration. And then we walked through how you can order copies. So thank you so much for coming today. And Rachel, do we have any questions that we need to address?
We do. We have a couple right now, and if anyone else has any other questions that they would like to ask, go ahead and put them in the Q&A and we can get those answered. So, okay, perfect. We're getting a few. So the first one is from Terrell. Can I see images on the GRO site or must I pay to see the image, in particular marriage registers?
Yep, great question. And the answer is no. No images are available on the GRO site. You do have to pay to get those, to get copies. Thanks for asking that very good question.
All right. And then someone asked, hi, this is great. Thanks. I understand GRO is an England/Wales website, but is the registration district concept similar in Ireland? I ran into the phrase registration district for the first time recently and find my past regarding Ireland. Thanks.
That is a great question, and I do not know the answer. If I had to guess, I would say that it is, but I don't know that for sure. So, what I would recommend is going to the Family Search Wiki and searching for Ireland civil registration. I know that for England and Wales, they have a civil registration page, and I would be like 99% sure that they have one for Ireland too. So I bet that would answer that question. Thank you so much for asking that.
All right, and then someone asked, recently marriage registers are showing only two names, almost never the couple, but one name from each marriage. This makes this source on Family Search mostly useless. Are they now AI indexed?
Oh my goodness. Yes, I've noticed that too, and that's why the marriage index currently on Family Search is not helpful. Like what I've noticed, a lot of the times it'll give you the wrong spouse. So for those of you who may not be aware of what this question is referring to, let me just back up here. Notice here that FreeBMD is listing who the right spouse is. So Florence Burke married Morgan, Alice married Patch, etc., etc. What is happening right now, and it's a bug on the Family Search Historical Records site, is that if I look up Alice, it is very likely to give me not the name Patch of her husband, but to suggest that Morgan is her husband or that Burke is or that, well, not herself, but it could list any of these three names, and I found that most of the time it's wrong. So, as a caveat, at least for right now until Family Search gets it fixed, don't rely on Family Search telling you the correct name of the partner in a marriage registration. Instead, go to some other site like FreeBMD. So yeah, it I would still attach the source because the source is still valid, but in either the reason statement or the note box, I would put a note that says, as of the day that I attach this source, Family Search is listing the wrong spouse, but the right spouse that I have verified and, this other site like FreeBMD or Find My Past or whatever, the right spouse, I have verified them and the right spouse is so and so. So that's how I would handle that problem for now until they get it fixed. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
Okay, and then it looks like the last one for now is I noticed that the birth year is the only info shown. I would assume you need to order a certificate to get the day and month if you don't already know it.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that gives me the opportunity actually to say, how do you put birth registrations? How do you enter dates for English civil registration in Family Search? So, how are we on time here? Rachel, is it okay if I take just another couple of minutes to explain this?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, so When you look up a civil birth registration, let's pop back to one so that we can see it on the screen. Okay, in an index on the GRO or any other site, they're going to list the year and they're going to list the quarter. Since families had 42 days to register their kid, if somebody was registered in the December quarter, they were definitely born in 1896. The only quarter that's iffy is the first quarter or the March quarter because a child, so like let's say in this case, if a birth was registered in the March quarter of 1896, they could have been born as early as the last part of November or any time in December of 1895. So it's misleading to put 1896, even though that's when they were registered because they had 42 days. It's misleading to put 1896 in there if they were really born in 1895. So what I'll do if it's the March quarter is I'll put about 1896. I've seen people put December, which is misleading because we don't know that she was registered in December. She could have been registered anytime in the December quarter or 42 days before the start of the December quarter. So basically, she could have been registered anytime almost in the last half of 1896. So it's misleading to put December. I've seen people put October, November, December. That is also misleading because we don't know for sure. And so I found that it's just simplest and least misleading. Is that, that a phrase? Just to put if the births are registered in the second, third, or fourth quarter, you know it's in that year, so just put the year. Don't fuss with trying to do registration stuff, registration quarters, because most users in Family Search will not know what those are, and it's going to make them jump to a wrong conclusion. If they're in the March quarter, so they could have been registered, they could have been born the year before, that's when I put about and the year when they were registered. And that's just a visual cue to other users that I didn't know the exact birth year, but I know that it's pretty close within the year that I have listed. So I hope that helps. And thanks for asking that question. And yeah, if you want to get the exact birth date, you would either need to pay for the registration or find a record that lists the birth date, such as the 1939 register, which lists people's birth dates. So if you have somebody that's in that, you can get it that way. Or sometimes christening records would list the person's birth date as well. So thank you for that question. And I am going to put a link to the presentation in the chat right now so that you can get to that and look at any of those links that you're interested in. And Rachel, that's everything for me. Were there any other questions that we need to address?
It does not look like it. I think you got them all answered. Thanks so much.
Sounds good. And thank you. So I will stop sharing my screen and turn the time back over to you.
Perfect. All right, and that handout, I will link that on the website. So for anyone who wants to access that after this webinar and maybe doesn't get the chance, that will be on our website when this video is posted. So thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope that you'll be here for our next webinar, which will be next week on June 20th with Maureen Brady on the Quebecois French Canadian research. A recording of this webinar will be made available next week, and you can view that on our YouTube channel or on our website. If you have any comments or questions, you can always email us at fh_webinars@byu.edu or follow our Facebook and Twitter. Thank you guys and have a wonderful week.